Shelby's American Legion Post, where we will be interviewing World War II veterans and learning about their experiences during the war.
Late in the war, the war wasn't quite over yet, but I was never in danger. I was stationed in Panama. So Panama was a nice place to be. We guarded the canal, but never had any trouble.
Okay, I enlisted in the Navy and learned to fly, and I was a pilot in the Pacific.
I was drafted, and I was in the parachute troops in the Pacific.
I was drafted into the Navy and served my time in the South Pacific down by New Guinea. I was there 19 months. One spot never moved after we got there. Just stayed there. I was attached to a floating dry dock, and that was to repair ships when they got damaged. They brought them back for repairs to bring them back to the States.
Well, I was in actually the Merchant Marine, which originally was not a veterans organization, but they gave us veteran status years ago. I made 9 trips across the Atlantic. I've been to England, France, North and South, Germany, Antwerp, Belgium, Murmansk, Russia. Been to Iran, North Africa, Casablanca. So I've made quite a few trips, and I enjoyed it. In the first part of the war, we lost ships on almost every convoy. Going to Alaska, we lost 5 ships going up and 2 coming back out of 32 ships.
That was all a free trip too. He didn't have to pay a cent for it.
Yeah. But I went to boot camp just like the Navy or anybody else for a short period of time, 6 to 8 weeks.
Very few married women worked. As soon as a girl got married back in the 30s, they lost their job. Even if they were even a secretary at the sales book, it was automatic that they would, on account of the Depression years, the married woman would retire because to give a man a chance to have a job then until the war broke out. And of course, ladies and women were allowed to work then because the boys were all in service.
In fact, there was 18 million people in the service in the United States.
So there's a lot of women working.
And so they had to have women to do the work at home, to make things.
So the women took your jobs after you left?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's where Rosie the Riveter.
Rosie the Riveter.
Yeah. And then after the war, they just stayed.
Yeah.
Back.
Seen a ship blow up, ammunition ship blow up in November of '44, and there was 300 and some people aboard that ship, plus the small craft and the other craft was tied around. They figured it was around 1,000 people got blown up in that explosion.
How many casualties?
Close to 1,000, I figured. And there's 300 and some on the ship itself.
What caused it to go?
It was an ammunition ship
Oh, I mean,
in the harbor. It was in the harbor. About 2 minutes after 8, November the 10th, 1944.
it was hit by a torpedo or what?
They don't know what, they think it was welded, they've done some welding and they got too close to the ammunition. It blew it up.
Wow.
It was just one big boom, and that was it.
Well, I could say also on that trip to Russia, we had 32 merchant ships. We had 40 destroyer and destroyer escorts, a battleship, 2 cruisers, and an aircraft carrier. And we still lost 5 ships going up.
The torpedoes, probably.
Torpedoes.
Yeah. And submarines.
Yeah. And 2 coming back just after we left the harbor of Murmansk. 2 ships were hit behind the midships, and they lost 1 person off each ship was all.
Is that right?
They had a rescue ship in our fleet.
One of the largest ships we had on was the Iowa battle wagon, and it just came in on December 25th of 1944 for just minor repairs so it could get back on the circuit to go to the Philippines and towards Japan. I never seen actual battle or anything like that. I was lucky that there was a place where whizzed behind the line far enough that I can't say we didn't have any worries, because they did, the Japanese planes did come in April of 45 and torpedoed both dry docks, or the 2 dry docks there, and they hit both of them. And so we had 88 ships on repaired during the course from September 44 till decommissioning in 1946. So that's quite an experience to see something like that. The worst ship we got in was the Houston, and I think that's the one they took 62 dead off of. And I didn't have to do anything like that, because I was on land all the time. But people on the dry dock itself took them people off, put them in bags and put them down and take them over to the cemetery. At that time, they wouldn't bring the people home like you do now from the war. They bring them right back to the States, flying back. But then they buried them at the island or wherever it was at.
What was, what was the casualty list of the whole war? Do you know how many million?
Boy, I don't know.
I remember like 5, 6 million over there. Oh, that seems awful high, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think it's too high. I think it must be closer to 3 million.
3 million.
On our side.
Yeah.
It's really high.
That is.
But I think out of the 16 million, the rest of them all died from
Old age.
old age.
Old age.
Wow. Tell us about you.
Well, I was in the only airborne division in the Pacific. We were in New Guinea, and Leyte, we went back with MacArthur to the Philippines, and then up to Luzon. And after they dropped the A-bomb, when 11th Airborne was the first one into Japan, we just flew in and landed on the Strip, which was kind of interesting, because they didn't know what they were going to do. Wasn't too sure they'd completely quit. But
Yeah, I was at Iwo Jima when flying off Iwo Jima, and we would, the B-29s, the big Army planes would fly up and bomb Japan, and a lot of them couldn't make it back to Tinian, Saipan, and Guam, so they would land in the water, and then we would spot them and have the submarine pick them up. And I was there when they dropped, I was at Iwo Jima when they dropped the atomic bomb, and we knew something big was happening, going to happen, because the commander called us all together and said, stay away from certain latitude and longitude tomorrow, because something big is going to happen. And if it don't end the war, we're going to invade Japan. Well, of course, that was the atomic bomb.
What was that like, knowing that had happened, that you were so close to that?
It did bother us, because we didn't know. They said just something big was going to happen.
Yeah,
He didn't tell us that we were going to drop the atomic bomb.
I'll tell you where you can get a lot of this information on the History Channel, on your TV. They show a lot of the battles, Navy and Army, and dropping the A-bomb. Yeah.
So did the people back here know more than you guys did, to an extent?
We kept the atom bomb pretty secret. No one knew about
Let me
that.
tell you,
Yeah.
I had a friend who was in the post office in Detroit, and he knew the APO numbers for everybody. He always told my folks where I was at. They always knew where I was at. But the
That
APO,
address was always APO.
Yeah, your mail came from APO. It didn't.
that was interesting, that was interesting.
And we couldn't tell, right home, tell where it was at.
If you put anything in there, they just
Cut
cut
it
it
out.
out. They'd
Our
get
mailers-
letters.
They
Our
read
mailers
the
sent-
mail.
Yeah, they censored everything.
Censored
Yeah.
it.
Censor most everything.
I was, as a pilot, every few days, we were assigned to the duty to censor mail. So all the mail from our unit that was going to be mailed home had to come to us as a group, and we would scan through all the letters, and if there was anything indicating where we were at, or the weather, or what was going on, we'd just take a little pair of scissors, cut those words out, and give the letter back to the guy, tell him to seal it, send it off. That's how it was done.
You know, speaking of that, I did something I shouldn't have during the war. I would mark down different countries, different ways of signing my name. So when I'd send a letter, they knew where I was at. back home, you know.
I had a coach.
By a different signature,
I
George
had a-
Jr. or George Perman or,
I had a system too. I would always, when I wrote the letter, I would put up in the corner, my name with my middle initial. And they knew when I started changing my middle initial that I would spell out the island that I was at. So, you know, and then when
there's ways to do it.
my middle initial came, then they'd have the name of the island spelled out.
Didn't require postage then either on our mail.
So,
Our letters are free.
For you or for them?
No,
Did
just
they
for
have
us.
to pay to write to you?
Yeah,
they paid it.
yeah,
They paid to write to us.
Yeah.
But we were all free.
Yeah.
Everything was rationed, you know, at home. There's gasoline, tires, food, meat, everything.
I came home one time, I was gonna be home for 15 days, and said, get out and get you some gas and sugar, and you had to get out to the courthouse. They'd give you a coupon for so much sugar, how long you gonna be there, give me a stamp for 4 gallons of gas, I'd gonna be home for 15 days, and they'd give me 4 gallons of gas. And I told them, my God, I said, I got relatives in Galley and Bizarres, I want to visit them. They said, well, that's all you can have. But I had a friend out here in the farm, he said, just come out and fill up, they had all the gas they wanted.
So the farmers.
Yeah, the farmers had all
Had to
that.
grow the food.
But you go into a gas station, I remember I was home when they stopped the rationing, pulled in down at the Texaco, used to be down there with the drugstore on the corner, and used to, no matter, they had gas, the minute that stamps went off, everybody lined up and filled up their tanks for the first time in about 4 years. He had plenty of gas all that time, but he couldn't sell it.
In the United States, which were thousands of them, were put in camps. Didn't call them concentration camps. it wasn't.
California, mainly
They
California.
were all put in camps until after the war was over.
Over in
The Japanese
Montana,
Americans.
Yeah.
Then just a couple, 3, 4 years ago, all the ones and the families of the ones that were imprisoned received so much money from the government.
Yeah, they were
Because
compensated.
they were for the United States, but we couldn't take a chance. The Germans, they didn't put in it wasn't concentration.
No, it
camps.
was,
Some other thing for it. But the Japanese, they did.
I think those people got $15,000.
I thought it was 25.
It could be.
It was quite a bit. Just a couple of years ago, the government knew they did wrong at that time because those Japanese Americans were just as patriotic as us German Americans. But I was a German American, they're Japanese Americans. I mean, my ancestors, they're German.
But there was so many of them along the West Coast, that's what's scary. They didn't take any out of New York.
You know, they should really pay us that much money because we would be pride. We didn't want to tell you that.
By the way, most of us was getting $50 a month when we went in.
I only got 25. Oh, some had to be sent home. 25 had to be sent home.
Well, you were married.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, see, I wasn't married, so I got the full shot.
I entered late in the war. The reason for that, the first part of the war, they did not take men with families. So this was the, where they stopped there. The reason that kept me out, that my son was conceived less than 9 months before Pearl Harbor. They'd been being a father as soon as he was conceived. So that kept me out a couple, years, too.
Yeah, see, I went in and they had 120 draft. They started at 21. Then they went down, they had 120 draft, and they took everybody 20 years old and up to about 45 if they were single, didn't have any children, or, you know. And then they dropped it the next time.
France, waiting to pick up troops. And while we were docked, another ship rammed ours and put a tremendous hole, probably as big as that whole corner, in the side of the ship into the soldiers were training. And they had to build a wood framework and everything, and they put a steel plate and then poured cement in there in order to make that safe for an ocean voyage. But then going back, we had 1,800 troops on board. We hit rough seas. Now 40, I seen in, I've got the article in the car, the captain says a safe roll for a ship upright is 47 degrees is the maximum. But we made a 52-degree roll. And the only thing that saved us was the wave, or the big wave coming back and righted us. And what they did then, instead of riding it out, they went into the waves, headed into them, but then the bow of the ship would come up and just bang, bang, slap against that. All these GIs were on board ship, below deck, they couldn't be above deck. And I've got pictures where they showed when we got to New York, they carried them out on stretchers. Quite a few of them were injured.
Yeah, they had Sealies and bouncing around.
Yeah, well, their bunks were like 7, 8 high
Yeah.
in the hold. And the ones up high, of course, would get thrown out unless they could hold on.
Imagine how seasick they got too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
All-out country effort,
Yeah.
and everybody was behind the war effort.
Yeah.
In the Vietnam War, that was a different situation. That was an unpopular war.
Same unit.
I know that I watched Saving Private Ryan, and it was upsetting for me to watch.
Yeah.
So I didn't know how it was like somebody who had actually been there and seen that in real life and what was actually happening.
When I come home from the service and had the old war pictures on, I could go watch the German war pictures, but if I watched the Japanese war pictures, I didn't sleep too good. So I didn't watch them for about a year. And no problem.